monthly members presents presentation. We've had a lot of these and they've all been successful and we've had a great turnout. And we're here again tonight. And we also have tonight with us our newest board member, Mike Lopez. So, and this is his first board meeting and it'll be his first members present. So special welcome to Mike. Thank you for coming. Before we get on with tonight's presentation, I just wanted to remind everybody that we will be meeting in Austin next month. At least once a year, we like to get over to Austin because we do have a lot of Austin members and a lot of Austin folks interested in earthing construction. So we just want to return the favor to them and move the board meeting over to Austin once a year. And that also allows us to have people from Austin who can't necessarily get here do a members present. And so next month, the presentation will be given by Christoph Irwin of Positive Energy. He's a remarkable mechanical engineer who's very interested in holistic and integrated, healthy and sustainable mechanical systems. And he specializes in design for residential construction, and he's worked on earthen projects, and so he's going to be talking about that. The location will be announced, TBD. So it sounds like we got it set, but that'll come out in an email just to be sure. And then I'm going to announce this again because we're not there yet, but if you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. So we had a little under 50 members last time. We have 51 now. Once we get to 100, then we will have our own URL. And it'll be a lot easier to send the link to people, and it'll say Earthen Construction instead of like XYZ123. So that'll be excellent. So, also I guess we haven't voted on it yet, but kind of along those lines too, we will soon be rolling out a new website. So it's going to look a little bit different, easier to locate information, that kind of thing, and see these videos posted, links, and so forth. So look forward to that as well. And then tonight, we're very excited to have Wade Kolb, who's been with us. He's been coming to ECI meetings on and off since basically the beginning of the organization. I think I met you a couple years ago there. And he's going to be talking tonight about rainwater catchment. And this is really cool because a lot of people who are interested in earthing construction are interested in general sustainable practices. And in Texas, we actually do get a lot of rain in this part of Texas, but it only comes at certain parts of the year. So what do you do with that when you get it? And what do you do with it when you don't have it? So anyways, without further ado, Wade, thank you.
Great, thank you, Lauren. Thanks. My family pronounces our last name Kolb.
Okay.
Just FYI, even though if you want to dig into these two brothers that lived in the Grand Canyon and were the first to film and take a movie camera on top of a rowboat down the Colorado River in the 30s. They made a studio on the south rim of the Grand Canyon. They would charge people $0.25 for that. Actually, they took still shots of people going down a mule trail, leaving, and they would run down there with their horse, and because that was where the water was, they would develop the film, bring it back up before the tourists got back, and sell them a print of them taking their tour. Ken Burns put a bunch of their old footage inside of his national parks documentaries.
Wow.
If you're ever curious, it's pretty cool.
So these
thing.
gentlemen
But I'm not related.
Oh.
Yeah. Our family came from South Carolina and they came from Pennsylvania. That's why they pronounce their name is Kolb. And if you go to their little store there, and when I told them my name was Cobb, they went, "No, that's wrong."
Well, we like the Cobb because it's like Earthen.
Yeah,
so.
COB.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, this is a derivation on a theme for the arcs of regional representative, you know, we kind of collaborated and put a bunch of stuff together years ago to do these presentations for, I don't know, any kind of a garden club or whatever, and I've spoke around, and the reason why I'm associated here is Stephen got in touch with me because while he was at Palo Alto, he solicited me to teach rainwater, and we pretty much collaborated with ARCSA to make it a 2-day, actually an accredited professional class that you could take the test and be certified. They've kind of changed their rules around a little bit, but that's what the AP stands for. So everybody recognizes this, or most everybody here knows where that is at Eco Centro. And that's a great little system. I just never knew why they didn't plan on pumping the water to the back for the gardening area. You know? It's kind of just delivers water to some of these landscape zones, right? And this is a little project that I worked on in the Mueller development in Austin. One of my first little residential things, and you know, those lots are real tight. But this guy wanted to, you know, he was going to get some solar panels and whatnot. But you can see how difficult it is to get your gutters and downspouts working to try to deliver as much water to the tank as possible. So everybody understands the water cycle, I'm sure, in elementary school. Got a serious deficit in water worldwide, and when I got into this, it was after the 08 crash, when I lost my permanent employment, and you know, like a lot of things that's happened over the last 10 years, it's just, you know, everything's just mushroomed for problems and left and right. But this is a very serious issue. I don't know if you can see this. This is something USGS made. This big drop of water represents, to scale, the total amount of water on the planet. This represents the amount of fresh water on the planet. This little one that you can't see represents the fresh water that we have access to.
Holy cow.
And yeah, that really comes home, and you kind of go, is that really to scale? But you know, you have to kind of give it to the USGS. You would think they know what they're doing with this representation of that volume. Rainwater is primary source of all water. It, as it falls, it's the purest water available. It's balanced pH, which is why the plants thrive on it. It doesn't contain any pathogenic or bacteriological agents. So, real quickly, this is the official way to calculate how much rain you can pick up with an inch of rain on a 1 foot square. You calculate that as 0.623 gallons per inch. So really with the loss and, you know, splashing and first flush that we're going to talk about, you really end up with the best way to think about it is a half a gallon per foot. So if you've got a 2,000 square foot roof and you get an inch of rain, you can pick up 1,000 gallons. And so that is, whenever I look at that, that's amazing. I'm passing around the ARCSA manual. If everybody kind of wants to peruse through that and kind of look at it, you can look at chapter 2. My name's on that one. But this is a, I think this is EPA well-known Water Research Foundation, but you can see the potable use, toilet, clothes washer, that's pushing almost half of the water use. And of course, this is a big issue right here. Leakages. Somebody's calculated like millions of gallons, even in a city like Austin. They lose a lot of water just because of infrastructure issues. And obviously, not too many people take baths, but a shower. When you really look at people that are living on potable use of rainwater, the best thing that they can do is learn how to take a Navy shower, which is, you know, if you can do that, you're going to be able to live with a lot of water with very little rain. And I can talk a lot about people who have who do live on rainwater, and they live on very little bit. The Texas Water Development Board recommends that you really shouldn't be catching rainwater under 14 inches of capture a year. And it used to be Central Texas used to be like 35 inches. And it used to be a nice little curve. You get like 2.5 inches a month, you know, maybe 4 in, you know, May and in October. And that was for eons, as long as we've been around. But that's changed now. You get these big dips, and you know, it's either a flood or drought practically. So with those changing patterns, you want to kind of think about that. You really can't do, you know, the manual that ARCS have put together, you know, there's tables of rainwater history and whatnot. But really what you want to do is have your tanks, and this is a little example of how much water is absorbed in the ground out in the rural areas, and of course it's almost reversed when you get into the city with all the impervious cover. And so these are stormwater issues right here.
What is a Navy shower?
You have to turn the water off to soap up or shampoo, and then you rinse, and then turn it off, and then
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And you yeah, people on Navy ships have to do that because they're out, they don't want to take a shower with salt water, right? So passive systems, there's passive systems and active systems. Active systems is actually the old plumbing and capturing the cisterns. But passive systems is part of the whole integrated design of thinking about water and what we're doing with it. For the longest time, we just made concrete trapezoidal channels and ran all the water out to the creek. But the thing is, you want to slow it down and capture it, get it to absorb back in the ground. I think Los Angeles, when they went through their real serious drought, they started trying to call it Sponge City. We need to get the water, you know, keep it here. Let's stop trying to run it out to the river or to the ocean. And so I think everybody at this point understands the value of rain gardens and you know, these parking lot green infrastructure is what they started throwing around as a new term for, again, instead of putting it in a concrete pipes and getting it out away from the building as much as possible, is get it to absorb as much as possible. And you can do all the engineering and plan on if there really was a gully washer, if this fills up, you have overflows that will connect to storm sewers. And of course, you know, just using a small container for a rain barrel is the good start. A long time ago, when we were doing classes and when I was learning it, some of the older ARCS guys, you know, this all started in Hays County. Hays County has the most per capita rainwater capture county in the country.
Really?
they're- yeah.
Wow.
Why are they
They-
so
they-
advanced?
Well, it started with the A&M AgriLife, and they were going through rain barrels with the master gardeners until somebody started saying, why are we doing 50 gallons? Why don't we do 500 gallons? And so that's when, and quite frankly, in Austin and in Central Texas, that's where ARCs started. But that's when they started having classes and whatnot. And the rain barrels was always referred to as the gateway drug to real rainwater harvesting. And then so it's kind of burgeoned, it's part of LEED and part of a BMP for stormwater management. And this is a project that I didn't work on this, but I knew the guy that was working on this. This was the first residential permitted non-potable water development. It was, and I forgot the name of it. It's some nice little kind of boutique subdivision in South Austin. But the guy that was fabricating these tanks in San Marcos made the little first flush tank there, and of course the water runs into that first, and that picks up most of the debris, and then as the water fills up, it goes into that tank, which is theoretically clean, and then you had to do some post filtration before it went to washing machines and toilets. Of course, plenty of options on where to put a tank and what kind of tank, and of course this is very hard to do in Central Texas. There's just rock around here. I like the aqueduct kind of a setup like this, which is, you get the tank away from the house and pump the water back to where you need it, back to the house. So there's two types of active systems. I mean, this is how simple it is. This is referred to as a dry system because it evacuates after rain. And the first flush has an outlet here that's a slow valve or opening, and after the rain it'll drain down real slow. But as a first flush, it picks up all the crud and dirt, and then after the roof has been rinsed off, then you have theoretically clean water going into your tank. And the wet system means that you're going to have an underground pipe that's, again, you have to trench that, but that has to be, you have to have some kind of a valve in there to release that water after rain. You don't want that water to sit in the pipe. It's okay to sit in the tank. The tank needs to be opaque. You don't want to have any kind of light coming into the tank. This is an Australian company that made this. The Australians were on the forefront of rainwater capture and reuse because they had a 15-year drought. And they've just been all over the map with fires and floods and droughts. But anyway, these are simple component systems of a good rainwater system and this stuff is all over the internet. 10 years ago when I first got into this, it was kind of hard to find information, and now it's just an avalanche. And the Australians, actually sometimes that was the only place you could get like filter systems or measuring devices or the plumbing that you would have to go to Lowe's and try to hook up a metric pipe fitting to a standard pipe fitting. That's a lot of fun. But anyway, it's just pretty simple. So the most important part of rainwater capture is pre-filtration. If you can keep the water clean going into a tank, just like people did thousands of years ago, for tens of thousands of years. It's possible to keep it super clean and actually not even need a first flush, even though there's a lot of code being written out there about using a first flush. This is a German company called Wisy, W-I-S-Y. This is a vortex filter. This keeps the water super clean. There's a grate in there. It kind of goes around in a vortex. And your bad water or your water with some debris gets dumped down on the ground. The other good water goes to your tank. This is a new device called a maelstrom that apparently is very effective. And then again, there's a lot of smaller. This is Australian product here. I don't know that much about these guys in the middle. That's a simple little interruption that you can cut a downspout and put a little filter and diverter on a downspout that anybody can do. But this is an example of just all the different kinds of products that are out there and things that you can do to try to make it aesthetic. And I'll show you a couple of these that I put in. And this is good because it's kind of out of the way, they're not bulky. And
Why are they that shape or that form?
well, to make sure they don't collapse, one, but it's called a slim line. So you put it next on the wall, and it's kind of out of the way. Doesn't hold that much water as this, and this is always a good picture because you can look at this and kind of go, well, wait a minute, the roof is this high, and this is this high. Actually, they built a sump and a sump pump that the water goes down into a container, and then there's a small pump that pumps it up here. And actually, when you see water tanks around town, that's virtually what they're doing, is pumping water into the tank. So different types of pumps. This is a type of sump pump, submersible pump with a floating intake screen. This is a German company. They're now in the United States. Those are good systems. And so the post-filtration, after you get it clean into your tank, into your cistern, and you want to bring it into the house, it's pretty simple to have a coarse screen and a fine screen, and then bring it into a UV lamp, and then it's ready to be consumed on a potable basis. I like this little diagram over here because I think it's possible with the way that you have to retrofit a house for rainwater. I think it'd be possible to have a potable tank kind of near your kitchen and bring in, and a lot of this stuff is off the shelf when they didn't have it. You can buy this and pretty much screw it into the wall. It's pretty simple, the plumbing, to do all this. And of course, again, there's codes, and the plumbers, I can tell you about how Texas was, the plumbers just we kind of wanted to have an association with them, but they kind of just took a lot of it, and my comment always was, plumbers don't want to work outside, it's hot. They want to work inside after air conditioning's running, But, to bring water in with a tank on that side of the house, and maybe on the other side of the house, you would have a non-potable system to take out to the garden. This is a ANSI standard, and Art's a mechanical engineer up in Chicago, Illinois. Actually, he might have been in Indianapolis. He worked for years working this out with the mechanical standards and plumbing standards. And this is pretty much depicts the elements of a solid, certifiable rainwater harvesting system for for potable use. This disinfection, this says ultraviolet, chlorine injection, or ozone. You really don't want to even read about that. Ultraviolet is really all you need to do, and that's easy, and it's less maintenance, and it's probably about the same amount of cost.
Well, how do you feel about the ozone?
It's just silly that the stuff that you have to do, and chlorine, no one likes chlorine. And the ozone, I really don't know that much about it. It's just, I've just kind of ignored that. That's why I'm kind of advocating that, just, if you're gonna do this, look at UV lamps. And they're all scaled up, however much water you're gonna use. And I think there's something else. Obviously, there's plenty of non-potable use. So rainwater, again, is stormwater management. It's included now in BMPs for stormwater, or TCQ and whoever. And so outdoor use, indoor use, and then you definitely want to make sure that you're in code compliance. I think the city of San Antonio these days is they're opening up to allowing, SAWS actually was, oh, well, we're doing all this work to be green and whatnot, when they really were just kind of paying lip service to the industry. But I think they've gotten better. I've kind of lost touch with what's going on in San Antonio and Austin, quite frankly. I mostly worked in Austin when I was doing this. And again, you as anything, you want to have somebody who knows what they're doing. I've seen some crud out there where people call me up and say, "Will you come look at my system?" And you just go, "Man, this is crazy that somebody just looked it up online," because it does help to have classes, just like anything. I mean, all the things that ECI does, you want to follow some standards. But you want to build something that's easy to maintain. This is a small, I've got a few examples here. This a system I built for an older couple in South Austin. This is 500 gallons, and there's a debris screen here, and then a first flush pipe. And as the debris comes off, most of it's done with this, and you can kind of calculate that the Texas Water Development Board suggests 10% of your roof you need to have 10% volume in your first flush. That's a good rule of thumb. But anyway, the clean water, quote unquote, goes into the tank. This is a slow little opening that drips into this bucket, and that water's good. You can still use that, and that's a little 200-gallon cistern, and that's got an Australian filter that, again, all I had to do was cut the downspout and put that guy in there and connect it up to a pipe, and that tank is sitting on the ground. I mean, again, a rain barrel of 50 gallons is good, but doing something that's 100 or 200 doesn't cost that much more. And again, if you, because when it does rain, you want to capture as much as you can. This is a place in East Austin, a landscape architect who worked, I guess he still works at the Wildflower Center. But I collaborated with a guy that used to be on the Texas Rainwater Catchment Association, the state board, that him and I were on the board together, and we collaborated on this job. So we've got water being picked up off of the roof, and it trenches all the way back to this shed in the back, near the shed, in his garden. He's got some raised beds. You can see the purple pipe. Those are drip emitters, and he's got about 6 or 8 of those that he's feeding with. I found this solar cell pump that's in a big, if this doesn't come up higher than that, you're gonna have pressure that's incredible that builds up in those things. It's simple physics, but, and these are the two slim lines that we were just looking at from another angle. I mean, it's not the same site, but that fit really tightly in there. That's right next to the house. You can kind of see them right here. So we captured most of it, except for some of the roof line that's going off to the front. Actually, there's downspouts on two of those garage standards. This is a place in Westlake where this guy was building a custom house, monoslope roof, perfect for rainwater, plus he was going to do solar. And I coordinated with the gutter guys to do a custom gutter. That's an 8-inch gutter, and it's 72 feet long. So these two tanks will fill up in like 2.5-inch rain. And those are 250 gallon. And I get in to do this, do some drawings to figure out what all I'm gonna need. And plus, with my angles, I can tell the guy who's gonna be making the tanks where my outlet is and where the overflow is gonna be. And here's the vortex filter on the wall right here. And some of this geometry was real tight. But this is it again. I think this is a good system. You know, I spray painted the plastic to make it look good, and there's a small pump, one of the pumps that we just looked at. And again, you could flip this guy on and hook up your hose and drag that hose all over the yard. That thing in the middle over there on the far right is a clear tube. I hooked up some plumbing on that to where you can open the valve up and it will equalize to tell you how much water is in the tanks. And then you can close that off and drain that because you don't want to leave water in there. It'll get septic. It'll get, you know, yucky. This is a place in Driftwood, south of Austin. This was a house before. We coordinated with the gutter contractor, and then we put downspouts, and these are all trenched around the house and go to the back of the house. You can see over there. So we had on that other side of the house is this side, and so we picked up about 100% of the roof. This is the contractor putting in the 20,000 gallon tank. You can see it sits on a sand bed, and it's going to have a food grade liner on it that hangs on these walls, and then they put a cover over the thing. And those are just protection because the bolts come through there, and so with the food grade liner, that protects from any kind of puncturing of the liner. But it's got a first flush tank and pump feeding back to the house. This was coming in from the well. The reason why he wanted him and his family wanted this is this was like 2011 and 12 when it was really bad drought, and he just wasn't getting good water. And but so we hooked up the plumbing from the rainwater tank to interrupt the water from the well, so you could go either take the water from the rainwater, whatever your needs are, or from the well, and it comes up here, and again, there's a coarse filter and a fine filter and a UV lamp, and we even included a meter, which is always a good idea to know how much water you're using, what's your family using, what are you using, and so you can kind of gauge, hey, we used too much water last month, then we can like take shorter showers. So anyway, it's a good system, and this pipe, this 2-inch pipe, comes all the way back from the from back around to the garage, driveway was right here, and he wanted a pipe with a fitting so he can get water delivered to his house in case of a big drought. So he could have tanked in water. If the well's no good and if there's no rainwater, he'd still be able to get water. And so he'd be able to put it into the cistern here. This is a place near Wyandotte, Texas, between Houston and Austin. This guy expanded his kind of barn, equipment barn. It's a second home. An older place that's been remodeled. But these are fiberglass. When I called these guys up, and they were just down the road in Giddings, it was really nice that was close by. Delivery cost was hardly anything. But I said, well, so what do y'all have this in gray and green? And he said, no, we have it in any color you want. And I said, what do you mean? Is this like Home Depot? You bring in a little sample? And it's like, yeah, we'll make it any color you want. And so that's a new thing, but you know, the client just said, no, give me some gray ones. But we used the German vortex filter there, and it's pretty much everything on this side. I forgot how long this guy is. It's a pretty big roof. This is looking down into that filter. It's got a screen, and this is a whole bunch of cedar fines, because it's there's a lot of cedar trees here, and so you can see how the water comes in right here. So it's forced around, and so the debris is kind of in a vortex, and then the water is able to go through this grate and go into the tanks here. And I kind of advocate, a lot of people and some text and online and whatnot will just show the connection at the top, because if this fills up, it'll spill in, but I like for it to equalize down here at the bottom. And also you can put a valve on that or something if you're, for any reason, you know, and obviously having another outlet here, because there's one on the other side. He was going to bring this into his garage with a pump, and then pump it out to his garden. So ARTSA, I got to give this little spiel here. Their slogan is to promote sustainable rainwater harvesting practices to help solve potable, non-potable, stormwater, and energy challenges throughout the world. I don't know if y'all are aware how the nexus between energy and water have a lot to do with, you know, because all the electricity we use, we're using water to generate that electricity. It's got to cool pumps, it's got to do a lot of things. I mean, everything's like, oh, how many gallons of water did it take to make your pair of jeans, you know? Oh, 70 gallons or whatever it is. I don't know what it is. I'm probably over-exaggerating, but I'm probably not too far off. It takes water to do everything. So this is a little SketchUp model that I made a while back, and I've kind of embellished it a little bit, being inspired because nobody's asked me to talk in a while. But this is a video again. Let's pretend this is earthing construction, and of course you want solar. You want a good roof that's certified or a good material. You want a screen on your gutter system, and again, your overflow needs to be put back in the ground as much as possible. I'm showing this first flush as being the German vortex, and again, all the component parts, a calming inlet that keeps it from not getting turbulent, and floating outlet, and then purple pipe to come out to the garden, and and then if you bring it inside, the coarse and the fine screen and the UV lamp, and after that, the plumbing can be white. Of course, there's a lot of code that says you have to label all of that stuff. Anyway, this is a couple slides that I borrowed from Ron, and this thing, I think I found this online a long time ago. I think this is in Poland. But what I'm trying to,
Yes.
yeah, and so what I'm trying to show here is that earthen construction is so dynamic that you know, you can't put a lot of gables and roof lines and stuff like that. You can't work with that when it comes to rainwater. But a butterfly roof is and a monoslope roof is really what you want. I don't think there's rainwater on this guy, but you could easily do it with a big gutter in the back and and a tank in the back. But also this kind of a flat roof, which is kind of an adobe kind of, you know, basic design, that you can get the roof to drain. And of course, it's kind of hard to, there's a rain chain, you can barely see it on that outlet there, you know, you kind of think about, well, gee, okay, a metal tank or a plastic tank, this is going to totally remove the aesthetics from the architecture. But if you can figure out the aesthetics and the design, you know, it's always worthy to have a functional building, and that's why it's crazy. Some of the HOAs, you know, that say, oh, you can't have solar panels. Well, I'm sorry, you know, and most of the HOAs, they can't. In Texas denuded the HOAs when it came to rainwater a long time ago. Texas has very forward-thinking laws on rainwater. It's not taxed, and you can't, if you put in a $10,000, $20,000 system on your house for rainwater capture, your ad valorem tax can't go up accordingly. It's not taxed, and so anyway, this is my last slide. I've got the actual SketchUp on my computer. If y'all want to kind of look back at what, you know, kind of these components are, but you know, I kind of my first experiences here with y'all's group, I was kind of hoping, I know that y'all are planning to do these sorts of things, but you know, using something like SketchUp or any kind of a CAD program or what have you to you know, put some examples on the website, you know, some details, a house or whatever, and just to say, hey, this is how it works, you know? And again, I know y'all talk about it. So.
We'll get there eventually. Thanks for reminding
Oh,
us.
I know, and whatever. I like the program. I've kind of gone through a whole bunch of tutorials. It's a great program. And I work with AutoCAD all the time, civil engineering. So I don't do this full time. I do something a lot worse.
What do you do?
Well, I sit in front of a computer all day. So anyway, that's the end of my talk. I appreciate everybody.
Question.
I have a question. You had mentioned the roof being of a certain material. What materials are not good, and what materials?
Clay is not good. Actually, asphalt, for the longest time, because the industry was so new, people started saying the asphalt shingles, they got the little fines that come off.
Yeah.
You can kind of interrupt that with your first flush. but people were saying, no, you can't do potable with asphalt shingle. But actually, has been some science to that. It's like, you know what? If you've got the micron screens, you may have to change your filters more often when it comes into the house. But you can actually use the asphalt shingles.
Okay.
But metal roofing's always the best, and you can kind of find information about that these days. Energy challenges throughout the world. I don't know if y'all are aware how the nexus between energy and water have a lot to do with, because all the electricity that we use, we're using water to generate that electricity. It's got to cool pumps, it's got to do a lot of things. I mean, everything's like, oh, how many gallons of water did it take to make your pair of jeans, oh, 70 gallons or whatever it is. I don't know what it is. I'm probably over exaggerating, but I'm probably not too far off. It takes water to do everything. So this is a little SketchUp model that I made a while back, and I've kind of embellished it a little bit, being inspired because nobody's asked me to talk in a while. But this is a little video again. Let's pretend this is Earthen construction. And of course, you want solar. You want a good roof that's certified or a good material. You want a screen on your gutter system, and again, your overflow needs to be put back in the ground as much as possible. I'm showing this first flush as being the German vortex, and again, all the component parts, a calming inlet that keeps it from not getting turbulent, and floating outlet, and then purple pipe to come out to the garden, and then if you bring it inside, the coarse and the fine screen and the UV lamp, and after that, the plumbing can be white. Of course, there's a lot of code that says you have to label all of that stuff. Anyway, this is a couple slides that I borrowed from Ron, and this thing, I think I found this online a long time ago. I think this is in Poland. But what I'm trying to, yeah, and so what I'm trying to show here is that earthen construction is so dynamic that you can't put a lot of gables and roof lines and stuff like that. You can't work with that when it comes to rainwater. But a butterfly roof is and a monoslope roof is really what you want. I don't think there's rainwater on this guy, but you could easily do it with a big gutter in the back and and a tank in the back. But also this kind of a flat roof, which is kind of an adobe kind of basic design, that you can get the roof to drain. And of course, it's kind of hard to, there's a rain chain, you can barely see it on that outlet there, you kind of think about, well, gee, okay, a metal tank or a plastic tank, that's just going to totally remove the aesthetics from the architecture. But if you can figure out the aesthetics and the design, it's always worthy to have a functional building, and that's why it's crazy. Some of the HOAs, that say, oh, you can't have solar panels. Well, I'm sorry, and most of the HOAs, they can't. In Texas denuded the HOAs when it came to rainwater a long time ago. Texas has very forward-thinking laws on rainwater. It's not taxed, and you can't, if you put in a 10,000, 20,000 dollar system on your house for rainwater capture, your ad valorem tax can't go up accordingly. It's not taxed. And so, anyway, this is my last slide. I've got the actual SketchUp on my computer if y'all want to kind of look back at what, you know, kind of these components are. But, you know, I kind of, my first experiences here with y'all's group, I was kind of hoping, I know that y'all are planning to do these sorts of things, but, you know, using something like SketchUp or any kind of a CAD program or what have you to, you know, put some examples on the website, you know, some details, a house or whatever, and just to say, hey, this is how it works, you know. And again, I know y'all are talking about that, so.
We'll get there eventually. Thanks for reminding
Oh, I
us.
know, and whatever, I like the program. I've kind of gone through a whole bunch of tutorials. It's a great program. And I work with AutoCAD all the time, civil engineering. So I don't do this full time. I do something a lot worse.
What do you do?
Well, I sit in front of a computer all day. So anyway, that's the end of my talk. I appreciate everybody. Everybody's interested. And,
I have a question. You had mentioned the roof being of a certain material. What materials are not good, and what materials?
clay is not good. Actually, asphalt, for the longest time, because the industry was so new, people started seeing the asphalt shingles. They got the little fines that come off.
Yeah.
You can kind of interrupt that with your first flush. But people were saying, no, you can't do potable with the asphalt shingle. But actually, there has been some science to that. It's like, you know what? If you've got the micron screens, you may have to change your filters more often when it comes into the house. But you can actually use the asphalt shingles.
Okay.
But metal roofing's always the best, and you can kind of find information about that these days. But slate and clay.
Slate and clay are not good.
Yeah.
Okay. So the asphalt's okay.
Clay tiles,
Right.
are good.
No. They kind of hold. They'll hold some I don't know, bacteria or something that's not, you know, a metal roof should like flush. That's the whole thing. You get bird dew up there and whatnot, and that's the big fear. Actually, raccoon is the big fear, but bird, you know, that's part of it. It's not just the debris from the trees or whatnot. You're actually trying to clean even the stuff that will really make you sick. And the giardia and the cryptosporidium, that is being neutralized. Those bugs are being neutralized with the UV lamp. And it doesn't kill them, but it neutralizes them so they can't reproduce. And that's kind of a truth thing that's like, if you're kind of grossed out about that because you're passing it through, but it's okay, you know. And like a lot of people, this one guy who used to teach it at a Menard, and he's one of the guys that started in Hayes County. He was the AgriLife director over there for years. He kind of helped get all this stuff started. You know, he used to quote something out of the Bible like, drink from your own cistern. And it really kind of makes sense, you know. If you go down far down the road to somebody else's cistern, they've got other microbes that are getting into their cistern. And again, people lived on this stuff without any problem. There's still people who live out in the country, but we used to have a lot of talks, we used to have a state conference, I used to go to the national conference, and it's an annual thing. They've collaborated with the irrigationist conference, and that's really where we should be. We should be licensed plumbing indoors, and we should have licensed irrigators, and there should be licensed rainwater in between those two. And it'd be a real, simple process to, have professional involvement with these systems.
So there is a recognized certification system?
Well, ARCSA is the only thing going on out there, and actually they don't, at the end of this year, anybody who's an ARCSA accredited professional is gonna need to take a test for the American Society of Sanitation Engineers. And they've kinda got together to say, we'll take over this nationwide, and then you have some municipalities that are saying right now, that we're not gonna allow anybody to get a permit for a potable system in the city, unless they're an ARCSA AP. So, I've learned a lot, and it's pretty simple. You just wanna keep it clean getting into the tank more than anything, so.
Is there a document or publication you can download for free from the Texas Water Development Board?
Well, the Texas Rainwater Manual is still available, but it's out of date, and I think Ron told me the other night that he had looked at it a little bit, but there's still, the fundamentals are there, and this manual that ARCSA publishes, if you don't want to shove that around to anybody else who wants to look at it, it's pretty involved, and that thing is about $70 for the color version. I think they want to charge maybe $50 for black and white, but again, it's all about making a little money on the top end, like everybody else. They're nonprofit, so.
Wait, the ultraviolet lamp I guess there's some sort of monitoring system so you know when it's.
The manufacturer will have a, like, this is good for 12 months, please replace this in 12 months, so,
Okay.
they're a little pricey, but it's not bad.
They do come with, aren't there some that have an audible alarm when the bulb goes out though?
Oh, yeah, if it goes out on you, that's something to immediate attention, for sure.
Why do the tanks need to be opaque?
Because light will cause algae,
So, okay.
even
So
if it's,
even though there's some ultraviolet.
yeah, some of those plastic tanks, like that 500-gallon tank and the smaller one, actually, you can look inside of there and it's kind of like, wow, it's just a little bit of light coming in. And those guys are out of Austin, and they started making a black liner on those things because they have different colors. And again, like anything, you can get the plastic resin in all kinds of different colors and swirls and stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of important. And even if you have a rain barrel and you're not pre-filtering it a lot, it's a good idea. This guy up in Ohio he works for the EPA, and he's actually done some scientific experiments that he kind of says that once a year you should dump out your rain barrel, put a tablespoon of Clorox and a whole bunch of water and rinse it out and just clean all the algae out, just in case a kid sees a spigot and wants to like drink it. And actually the code in Austin says that you can't put a hose bib on the side of a rainwater system because it looks too much like a hose bib on the side of a house. You have to make it a different kind of fitting. You can't use the brass kind of typical hose bib. So.
In terms of a first flush, You have to go out in the rain and turn it off with an umbrella? Or,
No, actually, a long time ago, there was, they used to, this guy that, when I took my first class, he had an old, like Y fitting in an old classroom, a one-room schoolhouse. And that it would start raining, and after it rained for like a few minutes, the teacher would have one of the students go out and hit the baffle to where now change it, because it was going on the ground, because it was cleaning the roof, and now go hit the baffle and bring it into the barrel.
but you
So it
said
used to be
that
manual.
You have to do that still?
No, it fills up, and then it'll evacuate eventually, and yeah, all of the first flushes, even the larger first flush tanks, they have a way that the valve is opened and it will drain real slowly after rain, evacuate that first flush. And then you have to get into that once in a while, because that's where all your debris from the trees and whatnot. And that needs to be cleaned occasionally, but not that often. Again, if you're have a good, again, using a screen on your gutter, that's a good first step.
I remember